Reading 21 of the CFA Level 1 curriculum will tell us about currency exchange rates. So we'll go through an introduction to currency exchange rates in this review. So please remember, the exchange rate is the price or the cost of one currency in terms of the other. So 50 INR to the USD implies that we have to pay 50 INR to get 1 USD. So this is the exchange rate of INR to USD. This can also be written as 0.02 USD to INR. Similarly, we can say 1.5 euro to the USD. That is 1 USD is worth, for example, 1.5 euro. The rates that are quoted in the world markets are referred to as nominal exchange rate. So this definition that we studied is of the nominal exchange rate, that is the price of one currency in terms of the other. The real exchange rate is the actual number of goods or the actual amount of goods that you can get in one country in exchange for the other. So for example, one loaf of bread in India can get us how many breads in US? That ratio would be the real exchange rate. So it is the actual number of goods that you can get in one country in exchange for the other. So let's say, for example, that the nominal exchange rate is 50 INR per USD and the price of one loaf of bread in India is equal to 50 INR. The price of an identical loaf of bread in the US, for instance, is equal to $2. So given a nominal exchange rate of 50 INR per USD, what is the real exchange rate? So if I had one loaf of bread in India, that implies I have 50 INR. 50 INR can be converted at the rate of 50 INR per USD to give us $1. And that $1 will get us only half a bread in the US. So one bread in India is equal to half a bread in the US, or the real exchange rate corresponding to a nominal rate of 50 INR to the USD will be given as 2:1 or simply 2. That is, 2 goods in India equal 1 good in the US. We will study in more detail in level 2 that the law of one price or the absolute purchasing power parity says that the real exchange rate in the world should be equal to 1. That is, the price of identical things everywhere in the world should be the same. In this case, however, the real exchange rate we have derived is 2. So transportation differences, various inefficiencies may result that the absolute purchasing power parity not hold at all points in time. As a shortcut method to convert the nominal exchange rate to the real exchange rate, please remember you simply have to make this quantity unitless. So if it is 50 INR per USD, then you have to multiply with the price in USD or the price of the commodity in dollars and divided by the price in INR. So in this case, 50 INR per USD was the nominal rate that we wanted to convert into a real rate. So the price in USD is $2 and the price in INR is 50, which will give us the exchange rate as $2 per, or rather 2:1. Please note the quantity is now unitless. So we'll do another example and understand. At a base period, the CPIs of the US and UK are both 100 and the exchange rate is $1.7 per pound. 3 years later, the exchange rate is 1.6 and the CPI has risen to 110 and 112. What is the real exchange rate? So to begin with, the real exchange rate is 1.7 because $1.7 per pound multiplied by the price in pound divided by the price in dollars would give us as 1.7. 3 years later, the exchange rate is now $1.6 per pound and the price in pound has become 112 and the price in United States has become 110. So the nominal exchange rate has gone down to 1.6 and the real exchange rate has become 1.6 into 112 upon 110, which comes out to be equal to. So one good in UK was earlier equal to 1.7 goods in United States. One good or one bread or one commodity or one basket rather, since we're talking of CPI. So one commodity basket on an average in UK now is worth only 1.629 commodities in the US. So the British pound has depreciated both in nominal terms. 1.7 has become 1.6. So 1 pound was earlier buying 1.7 USD. It's now buying only 1.6 USD. It has also depreciated in real terms. That is, one basket in UK was earlier buying 1.7 baskets in the US of similar goods. One basket in UK is now buying only 1.629 units of goods in the US. So remember, start with the nominal rate and try to make the quantity unitless. That is, multiply by the price in the foreign currency normally, divide by the price in the domestic currency. And we'll study this in more detail when we see the indirect quotes. A spot exchange rate is the currency exchange rate for immediate delivery. So for most currency, this means the exchange of currencies generally will take place 2 days after the trade. That is, the T+2 settlement happens. So for all practical purposes, it will be an immediate execution. And the price would be the current price or the spot price. A forward exchange rate is like the forward contracts that we'll study in derivatives, is a rate that is decided today. However, the currency exchange will be done at some date in the future. That date will also be decided, but the rate will be agreed upon today. The exchange will happen in the future. So forward rates are quoted for various future dates, that is 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or even 1 year. A forward agreement, as we'll study in more detail in the review on derivatives, is an agreement to exchange a specific amount of one currency for a specific amount of another currency on a future date specified in the contract. Now, very importantly, a direct quote is the value of 1 unit of foreign currency in terms of the home currency or the domestic currency. So 0.6 USD per AUD will be a direct quote for a US investor. That is, for 1 AUD or 1 Australian dollar, we need to pay 0.6 USD. It tells the investor the cost of 1 Australian dollar in his domestic currency. The indirect quote is simply the reciprocal of this amount. That is, the amount of foreign currency for 1 unit of the domestic currency. So 0. 0.6 USD per AUD would be an indirect quote for the Australian investor. That is, it tells him that for 1 unit of his currency, he gets 0.6 USD. Similarly, the indirect quote for a US investor would be how much? That is, for 1 unit of his currency, how many Australian dollars can he get? It will be 1 upon 0.6 AUD per USD. So very important. Direct quote is the value of 1 unit of foreign currency in terms of the home currency. This is what we will generally be referring to. In most formulae that we will derive and the concepts we'll study, we will work in the direct quote, that is 1 unit of a foreign currency, the price of 1 unit of a foreign currency in terms of the domestic currency. Indirect quote is also very simple to understand, is simply the reciprocal of the direct quote. So when asked to calculate percentage changes, remember that the percentage change is for the foreign currency or the denominator currency that you have calculated. So for example, if 0.6 USD per AUD becomes 0.7 USD per AUD. So the percentage change would be ending value minus beginning value divided by beginning value. So it would be approximately be 1 by 6, that is equal to 16.66%. So in an example like this, it is the AUD that has appreciated by 16.66%. So if 0.6 USD per AUD has become 0.7 USD per AUD, then the percentage change in the AUD is 16.66%. In the same case, if we were asked for the percentage change in the USD, then again, to calculate, USD has to be the foreign currency or the denominator currency. So we will first compute both quotes with USD as the denominator currency or the foreign currency. So 0.6 USD per AUD can be written as 1 upon 0.6 AUD per USD. And similarly, 0.7 USD per AUD is the same as saying 1 upon 0.7 AUD per USD. 1 USD buys so many AUD. So now when computing the percentage change in USD, it will again be the ending value, that is 1 upon 0.7 minus 1 upon 0.6 divided by the beginning value, that is 1 upon 0.6. So please note, this number will come out to be close to minus 16%, but not exactly equal to minus 16.66%. So whenever you're calculating the percentage change in any currency, make sure that that currency is the denominator currency or the foreign currency, assuming we're talking about direct quotes. Another important concept is of the cross rates. So if the USD to AUD is given to be 0.6 and the Mexican peso to the USD rate is given to be 10.7, then we can derive the cross rate between the Mexican peso and the AUD by taking the product of the two. So MXN to AUD can be written as USD upon AUD into MXN upon USD. The USD will get cancelled. What we'll be left with is MXN upon AUD. So it'll be 0.6 into 10.7, that is 6.42 Mexican peso to the Australian dollar. So remember, the cross rate is the exchange rate between two currencies derived with the help of a third currency. In this case, the third currency is the US dollar that gets cancelled. So we'll do one more example. The spot exchange rate between the Swiss franc and the USD is 1.7799, and the spot exchange rate between the New Zealand dollar and the US dollar is 2.2529. Calculate the CHF to NSD spot rate. So we are given CHF to USD and we are given NSD to USD, and what we are asked for is the CHF to NSD. Now please note, the first step would be to determine how the target rate can be calculated from the given rates. So in this case, we know we need CHF on the numerator. So we'll start with CHF to USD, and then we need NZD in the denominator. So because NZD is in the numerator here, we'll have to divide, because multiplication will not help our cause. So if we divide NSD by USD, we see USD gets cancelled and we get CHF by NSD. So CHF by NSD can be derived as 1.7799 divided by the NSD by USD, that is 2.2529, which comes out to be equal to 0.79 CHF for 1 New Zealand dollar. That's the concept of cross rates. We'll next study how to calculate the forward exchange rate in points. So please recall, the forward exchange rate is the rate agreed upon today for an exchange to happen sometime in the future. So if the AUD to Euro spot exchange rate is 0.7313 with the 1 year forward rate quoted at plus 3.5 points. Please note, this is not percentage points. If the question just says points, then you have to simply divide the number by 10,000 and add it to the quoted price. So spot is 0.7313 and the forward rate will come out to be 0.7313 plus 3.5 upon 10,000, which will be 0.73165. So remember the notation. If it is simply points, then just divide by 10,000 and add or subtract whatever the number is. So what is the 1 year forward AUD to Euro exchange rate today? The 1 year forward rate will be 0.73165 as we calculated. Is the euro trading at a forward discount or a forward premium? Please note, 0.73165 is greater than 0.7313. So this difference or this premium is always for the denominator currency or the foreign currency. So the euro is trading at a forward premium, and a premium of how much you can calculate. 0.73165 minus 0.7313 divided by 0.7313. It is the same as calculating the percentage change that I explained earlier. The AUD will be trading at a discount. To calculate the exact discount of the AUD, you can't do this. You can't just say minus of this amount. You'll have to first convert this with AUD in the denominator, that is 1 upon 0.7313 and 1 upon 0.73165. So the discount of AUD, had the question asked, would have been calculated as 1 upon 0.73165 minus 1 upon 0.7313 divided by 1 upon 0.7313. The premiums, discounts, percentage changes are always for the foreign currency or the denominator currency. The next example would be to calculate the exchange rates given in percentage. So the AUD to AUR spot rate is quoted as the same, and the 120-day forward rate is given as minus 0.062%. Please note, if it is a percentage and not points, so if it is percentage points or percentage, then we will apply the concept as we have always studied. So the exchange rate today is 0.7313 and 120-day forward rate is at a 0.062% discount. So it will be 0.7313 minus 0.7313 into 0.062 divided by 100, that is the percentage, or 0.7313 into 1 minus 0.062 divided by 100. Is the AUD trading at a forward discount or a forward premium? Now please note that this minus 0.062% again is for the euro. So euro is trading in this example at a discount of 0.062%. The AUD hence will be trading at a forward premium. However, the exact premium to calculate, we will first have to convert this into an indirect quote for the AUD, or the direct quote for the euro, that is get AUD in the denominator and then calculate the percentage forward premium as we discussed in the previous examples. So this will come out to be 0.7308 and the AUD is our forward premium. The concept of interest rate parity will be proven at level 2 when we study valuations of derivatives in more detail. For level 1, please just remember the formula. I don't expect it to be, I don't expect the derivation to be tested or advanced questions to come from this concept. Just note that the forward rate, that is the rate today for an exchange 1 year in the future. So the forward rate today for an exchange 1 year in the future will be given as the spot rate into 1 plus the domestic rate of interest upon 1 plus the forward rate of or foreign rate of interest, that is the foreign risk-free rate of interest, where both forward and spot are in direct quotes. So the interest rate parity can be proven as a no arbitrage relationship, which we will study at level 2. Remember, the forward is equal to spot into 1 plus RD upon 1 plus RF. More generally, you can raise it to the power T. However, if it's a 1 year forward, then the formula would simply be F equal to S into 1 plus R upon 1 plus RF. Consider two currencies, the ABE and the DUB. The spot rate is 4.56 and the 1 year riskless ABE rate is 5% and the DUB rate is 3%. What is the forward rate that will prevent arbitrage profits? So the forward rate will be the spot rate into 1 plus the domestic currency is the numerator is ABE, that is 0.05 upon 1 plus the denominator currency, that is DUB, where the foreign currency or where the rate is given to be 3%. So this will come out to be 4.6558 ABE to DUB. Don't worry about the proof, and the details won't be asked at level 1. Now, various exchange rate regimes exist. So if a country does not have its own currency, it can simply use the currency of another country or be a part of another monetary union. So if you don't have a currency, you can just use the US dollar or the euro as your currency. It's just the monetary policies of that currency and of that country that will impact the value of your currency as well. So it's not necessary to have a currency of your own. You can simply use the currency or be a part of another monetary union also. So these are the various exchange rate regimes that possibly exist or do exist. In a currency board arrangement, there is a commitment to exchange domestic currency for a specified foreign currency at a fixed exchange rate. This is very common across the world. Many currencies fix their currency against the US dollar. So a lot of the countries in the Gulf, Hong Kong currency, China, etc., had pegged their currency with the US dollar. This is normally because the US was the biggest trading partner, and to ensure stability in the imports and exports and that prices don't fluctuate because of currency movements, the countries got into a currency board arrangement wherein they fixed their currency to the US dollar. Of course, as the US dollar fluctuates against other currencies, this currency or your currency also will now fluctuate with other currencies. In a conventional fixed peg arrangement, you peg your currency to another currency or another basket of currencies with a deviation allowed to the tune of 1% or a plus minus 1% deviation allowed by the forces of demand and supply. So again, similar to a board arrangement, but some deviation is allowed. In pegged exchange rates with horizontal bands, again, it's similar to a conventional fixed peg arrangement. However, rather than having a strict limit of 1%, we can have a plus or minus 5% from the agreed upon value or the pegged value to that other currency. In a crawling peg, the exchange rate is fixed for a 1 year period. So the monetary authority or the government comes and fixes the exchange rate with regards to another currency for a period of 1 year. So it guarantees its exporters and importers stability for a 1 year period. And then it says the peg will be reevaluated, and we will see if the demand for the currency is high, then the currency may have to appreciate a little, or we will move the peg up. If the currency is weak, that is, the demand for the currency is low, then managing the currency is going to be difficult at the current level, so we will have to depreciate the currency a little. In managed floating exchange rates, there is no fixed peg or fixed rate guaranteed. However, the central bank does intervene from time to time if it feels there has been excessive appreciation or excessive depreciation, especially if it feels that has happened because of speculative trading in the currency. In independently floating rates, there is no peg and there is no fixed currency with regards to any other currency. The forces of demand and supply will completely determine the exchange rate at any point in time. So if more people in the world want to buy our currency, the currency will go up. If less people want to buy your currency or more people want to sell your currency, the currency will go down. So in the first three pegged, or the first four pegged arrangements, what happens actually is that the central bank or the government intervenes so as to balance the demand and supply. So if the demand is too high and the currency is appreciating, the government will come and sell the currency to maintain that peg. If the demand is weak and the currency is depreciating, the government will come and buy the currency so as to again keep the currency within a range. In the last part of the review on currencies, we'll study how the currency depreciation affects the trade balance or the trade deficit. So the trade deficit, as we studied, can be calculated as the exports minus the imports. A negative number would imply a deficit. As the currency depreciates, whether this difference will increase, that has become more negative or not, depends on the elasticities of my exports and imports to a currency depreciation. If a currency depreciation increases our exports massively and reduces our imports, then the trade deficit will decrease. Whereas if the trade deficit does not impact, or a currency depreciation does not impact exports, however, it increases our imports, then or the negative number will go up. So in other words, the deficit will go up. So the conditions under which a depreciation of the domestic currency will decrease a trade deficit are given in the Marshall-Lerner conditions. So if the weight of exports into the elasticity of exports plus the weight of imports into the elasticity of imports minus 1 is greater than 0, then the trade deficit will go down. Whereas if this is less than 0, then the trade deficit will go up. Ex is the elasticity of exports, that is the percentage change in the amount of exports for a 1% depreciation of the currency. And similarly, EI is the elasticity of imports, that is the percentage change in the amount of imports for a 1% change in the currency. So while generally the elasticity of exports should be a positive number, that is, as your currency depreciates, the exports should go up. The elasticity of exports should be a negative number, that is, as the currency depreciates, foreign goods become more expensive, so our imports should reduce. So if currency depreciates and this positive impact is able to overcome the high price of imports, please note the imports will become expensive. So if the INR depreciates, for instance, if the elasticity of oil imports, so it's a commodity that India imports heavily, is inelastic, so oil imports don't come down, then the deficit will increase because the currency depreciation will increase the import bill or increase the cost of these oil imports. So please try to memorize the Marshall-Lerner conditions, that is the weight of exports into the elasticity of exports plus the weight of imports into the elasticity of imports minus 1 should be greater than 0 for the trade deficit to decrease. Otherwise, the trade deficit will increase. For various combinations of the weight of imports and the weight of exports, we can calculate the relationship between the elasticity of exports and the elasticity of imports so as for the deficit to go down. So if weight of imports is 0.6 and the weight of exports is 0.4, then the elasticity of exports should be greater than minus 3 by 2 into the elasticity of imports minus 1. Or the elasticity of imports should be greater than 1 minus 2 by 3 times the elasticity of exports for the deficit to go down if the currency depreciates. The second theory is the J-curve effect, that says that if we are already in a deficit, that is our exports are lower than the imports, this number is negative, and the currency depreciates, immediately the elasticities won't play out. That is, instantly or immediately after a currency depreciation, this import bill will further go up. Exports will also go up, but because imports are more than exports, the initial reaction would be a further increase in the deficit. So as the currency depreciates, the deficit will first increase, and after a point our exports will start picking up, those elasticities will start playing out, and when the Marshall-Lerner condition is met, the deficit will start reducing. So initially there is a further depreciation and then the deficit starts to reduce. So this has been seen for various reasons. After the initial increase in the deficit, government policies also become pro-domestic production and domestic consumption, and various factors we've seen that in the long run lead to a decrease in the deficit after a currency depreciation. The third approach is called the absorption approach, that says whether the trade deficit will increase or decrease will depend on the balance of trade after a currency depreciation. So the balance of trade is defined as the domestic production of goods and services minus the domestic absorption of goods and services. So if the domestic production of goods and services is high and the domestic absorption or is higher than the domestic absorption, then the deficit would decrease. However, if the domestic production is low and the domestic consumption or the domestic absorption is high, then the balance of trade will be negative or the deficit will further increase. So the absorption approach says that you have to see the balance of trade after a currency depreciation or appreciation and then decide whether the deficit will increase or decrease. So the balance of trade is the domestic production minus the domestic consumption. If domestic consumption is high and domestic production is not, then of course we need to import more and the trade deficit will increase, and vice versa. So income relative to expenditure must increase for the balance of trade to improve. That is, production relative to expenditure must increase in response to a currency depreciation for the trade surplus to increase or the trade deficit to decrease. So that was about the review on currency exchange rates. Please go through the video again and make sure you understand the concepts, the basic concepts of direct, indirect quotes and premiums and discounts. So I don't expect very advanced questions to be asked at level 1. However, this will form the base of a very advanced discussion that we will see at level 2. Thanks a lot and see you next time.